This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Good afternoon. Welcome aboard. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled today on a key issue that's perplexed presidents for decades. Can one judge make a ruling that affects the entire country? In a 6-3 decision, the court said no. And that's a big win for the Trump administration, which has sought limits on nationwide injunctions. Legal analyst Jonathan Turley.
What I've seen does look like a victory for the Trump administration. They have been really hit with all these individual district judges effectively freezing federal policy and programs across the country.
The case before the High Court today had to do with the sticky issue of birthright citizenship. Legal analyst Jan Crawford.
It's important to point out this is not a case about the merits of birthright citizenship, whether people who are in this country illegally, their children would be citizens. Instead, it's about the power of federal judges and whether a single federal judge can essentially dictate policy for the entire country by entering these broad nationwide injunctions.
Again, the Supreme Court today ruling 6-3 to grant President Trump his request to narrow injunctions that block his authority to issue executive orders, in this case, an executive order dealing with immigration policy. Other news today, the Trump White House vowing to bring to justice whomever leaked classified data on those missile strikes in Iran. Defense Secretary Hegseth is dropping his own bunker buster of sorts on the D.C. media.
It's like in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump because you want him not to be successful so bad. You have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes.
Democrats on Capitol Hill remain unconvinced about the effectiveness of last weekend's bombing raid.
I just do not think the president was telling the truth when he said this program was obliterated.
Right now, we have no final battle damage assessment. Anybody who says we know with certainty is making it up.
South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham seems pretty confident Iran is no longer in the nuclear weapons business.
Their operational capability was obliterated. There's nobody working there tonight.
Even the government of Iran admitted today that its nuclear facilities were, quote, severely damaged in that top secret military mission. President Trump is expressing confidence that his so-called big, beautiful budget bill will pass by the 4th of July. That's 1 week from today.
These reforms will protect or create more than 7 million jobs, add 3.1% to economic growth, reduce taxes for the typical American by nearly 15%, and increase take-home pay for the normal family of four by at least $13,000.
The bill is stalled in the U.S. Senate after narrowly passing the House. The president can only afford to lose 3 Republicans in the Senate to get that measure across the finish line. Andrew Cuomo is reportedly staying in the race for mayor of New York. The ex-governor could run as an independent against 33-year-old Zohran Mamdani. That self-proclaimed socialist has vowed, if elected, to close prisons, fire police, and institute a $30 an hour minimum wage. Democratic pollster Dan Turrentine says that's too liberal, even by New York City standards.
Not only has Chuck Schumer not endorsed him, Hakeem Jeffries hasn't endorsed him, and the other senator, Kirsten Gillibrand, who's the head of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, has also been silent. And I think that tells you everything that you need to know. It's hard for them because they live in New York City.
New York Post columnist Lydia Moynihan says get ready for the Mamdani migration from the Big Apple should this guy emerge victorious in November.
Anyone with a business is going to be a little hesitant, and of course that's going to be amplified for 4 years if Mamdani is elected.
The current mayor of New York, Eric Adams, is seeking re-election as an independent in the fall. You may not know his name, but you certainly recognize his music. Argentine composer Lalo Schifrin has died. He wrote the catchy theme for Mission Impossible and composed the scores for such hit movies as Dirty Harry and Cool Hand Luke. Lalo Schifrin was 93. Still to come on the Noon Report for Friday. Good news for gas prices ahead of the 4th of July holiday. Cops react to AG request for fewer police chases, and schools face an important deadline to submit their no phone plan.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. The weekend is upon us, looking like a 50-50 deal. First, we'll have to get through some locally heavy thunderstorms this afternoon in parts of the area. The detailed forecast up in 10.
All right, Kevin, we will see you then. In the meantime, let's check the stories making news where you live, all across New York and Pennsylvania. School is out for summer in New York, but districts still have some homework to do. They must adopt and then post by August 1st how they plan to implement the governor's bell-to-bell cell phone ban. New York is the largest state with such a policy. That ban takes effect in the fall. Districts that fail to meet the deadline risk losing state funding. Gas prices are the best they've been since the start of the decade. For the upcoming 4th of July holiday, it'll be here before you know it. Business analyst Christine Romans on the NBC Today Show.
Starting on Tuesday, that's when this starts. July 1st, Tuesday through the next Monday. That's the big travel period for people who are driving. And you've got these gas prices, about $3.21. That's really a decent price considering 20 cents less than it was a year ago. So that's $6 or $7 extra when you fill up. That's real money.
That is real money indeed. A record 72 million of us plan to travel 50 miles or more from home for the Independence Day holiday. New York Attorney General Tish James wants to cut down on police chases. She says they're dangerous and should only be used as a last resort. Niagara County Sheriff Michael Filicetti says with car theft being such a huge problem, the AG's recommendation is just bad police policy.
Basically, what you're doing is saying, if you steal a vehicle, and I'll use that example again, and you take off from the police, that they're not going to chase you. And right now, we're having an issue.
Right now, the AG's police pursuit policy is just a proposal. There's been no formal legislation introduced. On average, about 350 people a year are killed in crashes involving police pursuits. Governor Hochul expected to sign Daisha's law soon. It's named after 12-year-old Daisha Sanders, who suffered cardiac arrest while at school and died. This law ensures that every school in the state of New York is prepared for cardiac emergencies. State Senator April Baskin was the sponsor of this bill.
Think about fire drills in our schools. Every teacher knows what exit they're supposed to use to get out of the building. That's something that is put in place for our students' safety. We need to have that when it comes to cardiac arrest.
When Daisha Sanders died 15 years ago at school in Western New York, there was an automated external defibrillator on campus, but no one was trained on how to use it. New York has approved $40 million for the University of Buffalo to receive a next-generation supercomputer for the Empire AI initiative. The funding will help solidify the U of B as the top player in artificial intelligence. The AI initiative aims to ensure that advances in artificial intelligence are used for the public good. Environmentalists are protesting Micron's plans to construct a $100 billion computer chip manufacturing business near Syracuse. The environmentalists are worried about disruptions to wildlife, truck traffic, and the overall impact this project will have on the community.
The struggle to protect ourselves from industries running wild where we live is a struggle that is going to have to continue.
Construction could begin this fall on that chip manufacturing mega site some 15 miles north of the Salt City. Pennsylvania Republicans want changes to the food which is covered by SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. They've introduced the Healthy SNAP Act, which, if passed, would ban junk food from coverage, and this includes candy and soft drinks. A not-for-profit wants Pennsylvania to green light more funding for road, bridge, and transit repair projects. Rocky Moretti with the D.C.-based National Transportation Research Group.
And moving forward, state and local governments will face a significant challenge in improving local roads and bridges and also improving safety on these vital transportation links.
The Pennsylvania House recently approved a $500 million investment in new road, bridge, and transit repair projects. That legislation has stalled in the state Senate. A former Pennsylvania newspaper publisher has pled guilty to mail theft. 54-year-old Harry Hartman admitted to stealing packages from the Gettysburg Post Office and then selling those packages on eBay. He worked as the publisher of that newspaper, the Gettysburg Times, for several years and is now facing up to 5 years in prison. We've got sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, the Mets closed out their home series against the Braves with a 4-0 victory. Pete Alonso went 3 for 4, had an RBI, while Jeff McNeil drove in a pair with a base hit in the 7th inning. The bad news, starter Griffin Canning had to leave the game in the 3rd inning. The Mets are fearful Canning tore his Achilles, and if that's the case, he is done for the season. New York, though, now in sole possession of first place in the National League East, and that would be because the Phillies dropped the 2-1 decision to the Astros. Houston actually swept Philadelphia in the 3-game series to win their 4th straight game. Phillies now a half game behind the Mets. Looking around the league, welcome back Dietrich Enns from Japan and Korea. He came back for the Detroit Tigers to toss 5 shutout innings. Only allowed 1 hit. Detroit shut out the Athletics 8-0. In fact, shutouts seem to be the rule of the day, as Toronto did it to the Guardians 6-zip. The Rays won 4-zip over Kansas City, and the Cubs blanked the Cardinals 3-0. In games where there wasn't the whitewashing, the Twins hammered the Mariners 10-1. The Marlins beat up on the Giants 12-5, completing a 3-game sweep. And the Dodgers knocked off the Rockies 3-1. In the Dodgers' victory, Clayton Kershaw struck out 5 over 6 innings to inch ever so closer to that 3,000 strikeout mark. He now sits at 2,997 for his career. Shohei Ohtani went deep in that game, and I mention that because both MVPs from Major League Baseball have secured their spots in next month's All-Star Game. Ohtani and Aaron Judge elected by the fans yesterday. Remaining starters will be announced on July 2nd. That is a look at sports.
All right. Thank you very much, Randy. And still to come on the Noon Report, Supreme Court hands Trump a major win. We'll take a closer look at the Erie Canal on this week's edition of Staycations. And Kev says mixed bag weather-wise for your weekend plans. His forecast is coming up after this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. In the film Master and Commander, Russell Crowe's character, Captain Aubrey, describing a new piece of technology, says, "What a fascinating modern age we live in." The joke works, given the film setting in 1803, which is at the beginning of the modern age. This time of technological advances, which seem to come quickly and often, paved the way for our current cultural moment and its struggle with the very concept of truth. Most historians identify 1789 as the beginning of modernism, with the storming of the Bastille and the French Revolution, and the end of modernism 200 years later with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of communism. The era in between featured a great and growing faith in human ingenuity. Confidence was high that given enough time, effort, and advances in technology, science, and productivity, most of the problems that plagued humanity could be solved. In short, the modern age was defined by utopianism and hubris. Though the solutions offered varied greatly, there was a shared certainty that the solution would be found. But that confidence collapsed in the face of ongoing wars that were fueled by industrialization and destructive ideologies such as nationalism, scientific racism, and communism. The combined bloodshed unleashed in the 20th century alone was on a scale unprecedented in human history. In the end, the Soviet gulags, the Nazi concentration camps, and the threat of global nuclear destruction turned modern optimism into despair. And few explain this whole turn of events as well as the late Christian thinker Francis Schaeffer. In the How Should We Then Live film series, Schaeffer showed how art and literature had abandoned the pursuit of beauty and transcendence for what he called fragmentation. Modern optimism was devolving into a postmodern hopelessness, and confidence in the truth waned. Postmodern philosophers suggested that the very notion of truth, in fact, was a myth at best and a lie designed to privilege the powerful at worst. And all that remained was your truth and my truth, which, we were told, could be preserved through calls for tolerance. But as it turned out, postmodernism was far less liberating than was advertised. To borrow a phrase from George Orwell, all truths were equal, but some were more equal than others. If the motto of modernism was Descartes' I think, therefore I am, the motto of postmodernism became I feel, and therefore you must affirm me. Throughout it all, there was still that central feature of humanity. Because we're made in the image and likeness of God, the drive to seek truth. Even those who believe truth doesn't exist seem somehow compelled to treat the ideas they imagine and create as if they're true, and then to force those ideas on the masses. And like all ideas, these too have had their consequences. And like all bad ideas, they're victims. Just as the hubris of modernism collapsed into relativism, the promises of postmodern tolerance have also collapsed into despair. For all the chaos of this cultural moment, God has called us to this time and this place. The theoretical predictions of Francis Schaeffer, Chuck Colson, and many others have now become existential reality. So we must again ask the question that they asked. How shall we then live as followers of Christ in this moment to which God has called us? For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
All right, John, thank you very much. The weekend is here. Kevin Williams is next.
Here is your family life weather forecast for this afternoon. Warm and muggy, clouds, sun, a couple of showers and heavy thunderstorms roaming the area. High temperatures, 70s and low 80s. Tonight into tomorrow, rather cloudy, muggy, a couple of showers and rumbles. Low temps tonight, 60s to near 70s and low 80s tomorrow. Sunday may start with some fog, but it'll turn out mainly sunny with high temperatures in the mid-70s to the middle 80s.
All right, looks like Sunday's the pick day of the weekend. Thank you, Kevin. This is the Noon Report. I'm your host, Bob Price, and here's a quick recap of what's happening today. Friday, the 27th of June. The U.S. Supreme Court wrapped up its 9-month term today with key rulings in several cases. The biggest one of them all was a 6-3 decision. The justices voted to limit the power of individual judges in issuing nationwide injunctions, and that is a huge win for the Trump White House in its efforts to clamp down on illegal immigration.
This is a very important, significant victory for the Trump administration at the Supreme Court. One, I think that a lot of people did not foresee back in January or February when the president took office and started issuing the executive orders.
Legal analyst John Yoo says the downside of today's ruling will be what he called the fragmentation of federal law. Capitol Hill lawmakers continue to receive classified briefings on the effectiveness of last week's bombing raid at nuclear sites in Iran. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham is convinced those strikes had the desired effect.
They blew these places up in a major league way.
In a major league way, he says. Graham says the strike set Iran back years, not months, in its pursuit of nuclear weapons. Connecticut Democrat Chris Murphy's not so sure.
I walk away from that briefing still under the belief that we have not obliterated the program.
Iran's foreign minister acknowledged that the 3 sites targeted sustained significant damage. President Trump is trying to whip up support on Capitol Hill this weekend for his self-entitled Big Beautiful budget bill. The multi-trillion-dollar spending package includes more money for tax cuts, border security, and military readiness. Mr. Trump can only afford to lose 3 Republicans in the Senate if he's going to get this across the finish line. The White House hopes he's able to do it in time for the 4th of of July. We'll see. More companies have agreed to end the use of synthetic dyes in their food and beverages. Nestle, ConAgra, Smuckers, General Mills, and Kraft Heinz have all announced they're ending the use of artificial coloring. And that pleases Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr.
These companies are standing up, getting rid of food dyes. The great thing about it is that we have not had to regulate. We have not had to drop that hammer. We're getting this extraordinary outpouring of enthusiasm and cooperation.
Kennedy says he is pleased that companies are voluntarily eliminating artificial coloring without the government having to use coercion. A Christian camp in Colorado has been freed from the state's new transgender-friendly policy. A judge has just ruled that the camp in question does not have to force boys and girls into the same cabins, restrooms, or shower facilities. Alliance Defending Freedom argued that Colorado policy presented a threat to child safety. 3,000 children a summer attend that Christian camp. You're listening to the Noon Report for Friday on Family Life.
It started out as what many thought would be a boondoggle known as Clinton's Ditch, but now, celebrating the bicentennial of its completion, the Erie Canal proved the naysayers were all wet. I'm Mark Webster, and today's destination is the Erie Canal Museum in Syracuse, New York.
I've got me a mule, her name is Sal. 15 miles on the Erie Canal. She's a good old worker and a good old pal. 15 miles on the Erie Canal.
Derek Kraft is the museum's director of operations and educational programs, and he's understandably excited about celebrating 200 years of the Erie Canal being a life-giving artery traversing upstate New York. This is a big year for the Erie Canal. I imagine it has to be, as a result, a big year for the Erie Canal Museum as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's the bicentennial of the opening. We've been doing bicentennial commemorations for 8 years now, from when they started in 1817 digging the canal. But this is the big year for both the canal and the Canal Museum.
Well, if my grade school history isn't failing me, they called it Clinton's Ditch, I believe, way back in the day when they were building it, and people didn't think too much about it when it was first getting built.
Yeah, so it was a controversial project at the start. DeWitt Clinton, who was eventually elected governor of New York, was the big proponent of it, thought that New York State itself could build the canal, and this was a huge undertaking, 363 miles through the frontier, essentially, of the country. There were no trained engineers here at the time, so people thought this was something that couldn't be done, but Clinton and his allies did think that New Yorkers could accomplish this huge task.
And
they did.
His vision was spot on, too. It turned out to be something that, in a lot of ways, changed not only New York State, but really the world.
Oh, for sure, yeah. It would have a transformative effect on New York in general. Transportation times were cut from about 1 month to less than a week from Buffalo to New York City, and transportation costs were cut from about $100 a ton to less than $10 a ton. So this has an enormous impact on all of New York. Cities like Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and Utica spring up practically overnight. Meanwhile, New York City became America's primary port, and then all the cities of the Midwest, too, owe their kind of origins, places like Cleveland and Chicago, to the opening of the canal. It's not just the big cities, too. Small towns all along the bank also see huge growth and economic development.
And even though the canal maybe has been supplanted in terms of commerce, it still is quite a viable source of recreation for a lot of folks in upstate New York.
For sure, yeah. There's still tons of recreational boating that goes on, but also in 2020, we completed the Empire State Trail, which just last year had 4 million people biking, hiking, running, etc. It's a great place to visit.
Well, all of that background really serves to take us to the Canal Museum itself. Such rich history for your facility to draw on. Take us through it a little bit here. What are some of the main things people will see if they come to visit the Erie Canal Museum?
Sure. So we're right in downtown Syracuse, located on Erie Boulevard, which was the former Erie Canal. They paved it over in the 1920s when they built the modern canal. And we're housed in what we usually consider our most most important artifact, which is our 1850 Waylock building. That's W-E-I-G-H, lock. Essentially, it's kind of a toll booth for the canal. You would have brought your boat into what's called the weigh chamber. They'd drained all the water out, and they could weigh your boat and figure out how much you were carrying. You then had a toll assessed on it. That's how the state paid off the canal. And if you come to the Canal Museum today, one of the big highlights is the recreated boat that we have in the weigh chamber as well. Likewise, the Waylock building, there were 7 of them across the state. All of them were knocked down except our building, which was saved in 1962, which is when the museum was founded. And to our knowledge, there are no other existing Waylock buildings in the rest of the world. So in itself, it's pretty exciting. We also have extensive exhibits on the history of the canal, both across New York State and looking at how it impacted Syracuse. Plus, we have like a recreated canal town upstairs as well.
Tell me a little bit more about that. There are a lot of, you can still see modern versions of canal towns that sprang up all up and down the 300 plus miles of the canal. So what was one like?
We have most of the things you would see. We've got your general store. The Erie Canal is huge in allowing people in upstate New York to access goods that they never had before. We have accounts of people walking like 50 miles to get a single bag of flour before the canal. After that, as the sign in our general store says, anything we don't have, you don't need, right? They could just get you everything. But likewise, we also highlight all the industries that rise up along the banks of the canal, like Syracuse pottery. We have a recreated tavern, which, in addition to being a place to get a drink after a long day on the canal, was a place to also socialize and learn the latest news and gossip in town. And then there's also our recreated theater, because in addition to all the economic prosperity that the Erie Canal brings, it also introduces new arts and culture and social movements to the canal as well. Tons of theaters would spring up along the canal. There would be circuses that would travel up and down the canal, as well as a lot of different lecturers and speakers, as well as preachers and revivalists moving up and down, which resulted in the Erie Canal becoming this important center for a lot of different religious movements and reform movements throughout New York as well.
Fascinating. You touched on this briefly, I think. Among the other big exhibits there is a full-size replica boat. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's the Frank Buchanan Thompson. We built it in the late 1980s, and it's a model of what's called a line boat, which was the type of boat that could carry both cargo and passengers, and folks can walk on board the boat. We have a tiller you can move to pretend steer the boat. You're actually on where Erie Canal water used to be, and then you get to see what living in a canal boat would have been like. We like to remind visitors that these boats operated 24/7 the whole spring and summer long. Then you get to walk through the cargo hold, which actually has activities for children that was recently installed in it. We've got a little like puppet theater and coloring area, and then you get to go into the passengers' cabins and see what it would have been like to travel on board a canal boat during the heyday of the canal. And people are always shocked by that and how small the bunks are, etc., and also how cramped it was.
Yeah, especially the original canal was smaller, right?
Yep, the first one was 40 feet wide and 4 feet deep. When they called it Clinton's Ditch, they weren't really joking.
It's got to be neat for kids, especially to come through here and get a tour. They probably, I'm hoping they still teach about things like the history of the Erie Canal in school, and to actually get a chance to see what it was really like, it's got to be a real eye-opener for them.
Yeah, they do still teach it in school. It's part of the fourth grade curriculum in New York State. We had about 3,000 kids come through the museum this year, and we also have a lot of things for kids if they're not on field trips as well. Like I mentioned, we've got that area inside the boat, but also we just began partnering with the Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor to have a Junior Rangers program. We have a little workbook that kids can get to learn more about the canal, and at the end you get a little Junior Ranger badge from the National Park Service. Plus the Boy Scouts have an interesting badge kids can get. You don't even have to be a member of Scouting. You just have to walk, I believe, 15 miles on the canal, just like the song, and visit a couple of canal sites and learn more about the canal.
So if somebody wants to learn more, say they're going to plan a trip, what's the best way to go about it?
I would suggest checking out eriecanalmuseum.org. Also, eriecanalway.org is a great resource for people to learn about events happening all throughout the canal corridor.
That's Derek Pratt, Director of Operations and Educational Programs at at the Erie Canal Museum in Syracuse, New York. This has been Family Life Staycations, a weekly summertime feature highlighting great places to visit around the Family Life listening area. Please join us again next time as we hit the road again for another Family Life Staycation.
Come on! All right, can't wait to see where we go next week. Thank you, Mark. Staycations airs Fridays during the summer months on your favorite Family Life station. We're going to talk more, by the way, about the Erie Canal in just a minute. The goat groomers are on the job there. Details next.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. An unsettled afternoon will include warmth, humidity, some sun, a couple of thundery downpours as well. As we work through the weekend, the passage of a cold front will take showers on Saturday and push them away, ushering in nicer, brighter weather for Sunday. It's the pick day of the weekend still. For this afternoon, warm and muggy, clouds, sun, a couple of showers and heavy thunderstorms roaming the area. High temperatures, 70s and low 80s. Tonight into tomorrow, rather cloudy, muggy, a couple showers and rumbles. Low temps tonight, 60s to near 70, 70s and low 80s tomorrow. Sunday may start with some fog, but it'll turn out mainly sunny with high temperatures in the mid-70s to the middle 80s.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Finally at noon for Friday, meet the Bleat Fleet, goats who are helping keep the Erie Canal clean this summer. Yeah, the New York State Canal Corporation has launched a new pilot program that uses goats to manage vegetation, and these are actual goats, not like Tom Brady. Officials say the animals can reach steep and overgrown embankments better than humans or even machines.
They'll sit out here and eat all day long, so they're very efficient in what they do. They love it. They enjoy it. And for a lot of these goats, it actually rescued them from a fate that probably wasn't very good at a livestock auction or stuff. So it gave them a new lease on life.
Yeah, so win-win all the way around, says Jay Sherman. He runs a goat farm near Rochester. The initial program expected to last about a month. The goats will be grazing the embankments around the Erie Canal at the Grease Canal Park in Rochester. And don't pet them. They're working, so let them be. That's our world, the world we live in. Friday, the 27th of June. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.